Welcome students to lesson 9 of the Changing Economic World topic. This lesson will be about why the development gap exists, and specifically we will be focusing on the economic causes to do with money and trade. Take a moment to write the date, title and learning objective. Make sure that you have a pen and paper ready. Let's go. First task, let's review prior learning. Please write 1 to 10 and attempt the questions. Pause the video while you do this and then mark your answers. Go for it. Okay, let's look at the answers. So number 1, the largest economic sector in LICs is the primary sector. So in rural areas, farmers, miners. 2, most people in LICs live in rural areas and have low-paid jobs. 3, the movement of people from the countryside to cities is called rural to urban migration. 4, NEEs like Brazil have rapidly growing secondary and tertiary sectors. 5, what does DTM stand for? It's the demographic transition model. 6, what stage of the DTM has the highest rate of natural increase? Stage 2. 7, natural increase happens when the birth rate is higher than the death rate, and so the population grows. 8, in stage 3 of the DTM, women are increasingly well educated, have moved to cities and used contraception, which means birth control, to prevent pregnancy. 9, the multi-measure of development that combines scores of literacy rate, life expectancy and GDP per capita is called the Human Development Index, very important one. And 10, the happiness, health and comfort people feel in their life is called their quality of life. Give yourselves a mark out of 11. And any that you got wrong, write down the question, write down the answer on a flashcard or on a sheet and test yourselves on them. Come back to this lesson in a week and attempt this quiz again. Okay. Today I'm going to introduce you to the idea that trade, which means the buying and selling of products and goods between countries, causes some countries to remain LICs. It stops their development. I'm going to show you how this works. First, I'm going to introduce you to the idea of what a country sells. Here is a diagram called a tree map. It shows the products that a country sells to other countries. This is Ethiopia's tree map. Ethiopia is an LIC in East Africa. Answer the questions that I show you based on this tree map. Okay, number 1. What type of country is this likely to be? Well, if you look carefully, you'll have noticed that all of these products are from the primary sector. They are primary products. So are many of these, and so are these. These are from mining. Gold is a mined product. So most of what this country exports, what it sells, are primary products. And since the largest sector in an LIC is the primary sector, this is likely to be an LIC. That's the answer to number 2. Where does this type of country get most of its manufactured products then from? So for example, if a country mines for gold, it often uses machines like diggers. Or if accountants in a country work with computers, or people use mobile phones in a country, or they take a train in a country, where do they get those manufactured products from? And the answer is that most manufactured products in LICs come from other countries. They import these products, they buy them. This lesson you're going to find out why that is a problem for LICs, why getting all of your manufactured products from another country is a problem if you mostly export primary products like these. Okay, keywords today, 3 of them. Really important to know these. Look at this picture here. All of these pictures have something in common. They are things, either man-made or natural, that have a value to us, that we buy and sell. So for example, bread, or flowers, or light bulbs, or lamps, or TVs. Any of these things that you see here are examples of goods. They are man-made or natural materials that people make, dig up, or grow to sell. There are 2 key words that you need to know in relation to trade. The first one is an export. An export is a good or goods that a country sells to other countries. For example, the UK exports cars to the USA. And secondly, an import is a good that a country buys from other countries. So for example, the UK imports fridges from Germany. 3 keywords, write them in your books, highlight just the keywords. The big question of today is, how does trade make some countries less developed than others? I'm going to introduce you to 2 questions and I'm going to answer them with you. They're quite complex, so you'll need to be paying full attention. Make sure you're writing notes as we go through. Cause of the development gap is the balance between primary and manufactured products. Let me explain. This woman here is an Ethiopian lady who is growing cocoa beans. She's a cocoa farmer in Ethiopia. And she doesn't make very much money from this. She grows the plants and she separates the beans and she exports them to other countries. Her income is quite low from this. She works in the primary sector. She's a rural farmer, cocoa farmer in Ethiopia. Most LICs export mostly primary products like these, either minerals or metals or oil, or agricultural products like crops or meat. Why is this a problem? Because if a country exports mostly primary products, its income, its revenue from its exports will be quite small because primary products are, generally speaking, cheap. However, LICs have to import manufactured products because they don't have a large manufacturing sector to manufacture them themselves. For example, Ethiopia. Ethiopian Airlines, the national airline of Ethiopia, buys a lot of very expensive aeroplanes. Aeroplanes are examples of manufactured products and they are worth far more than cocoa beans. This is a Boeing aeroplane worth more than £200 million for one of them, and Ethiopian Airlines has many of these. As a result, Ethiopia spends a lot of money on its import of manufactured products. Second important point. Primary products are cheap. So when you sell them to another country, usually an HIC, something happens to those primary products for them to be used. For example, these are cocoa beans. They are cheap. However, in HICs, the cocoa beans are imported, for example in Switzerland or Belgium, and they are turned into chocolate bars. Cadbury, Nestle, Mars, they all make chocolate. Now this is really important because chocolate bars that have been manufactured in a factory are worth far more than the cocoa beans they came from. So the same amount of cocoa in these chocolate bars is now worth far more and sold for far more than the cocoa beans were. Which means that the companies in the HICs, and as a result the people in the HICs, get much richer than the people in the LICs, which only sold the primary product, cocoa beans. So, LICs stayed poor because they sell primary products which are cheap and they buy manufactured products which are expensive. HICs also get rich because they manufacture and sell expensive products and they also turn the primary products from the LICs into manufactured products, which also makes them more valuable. This problem, where the LIC sells cheap manufactured products, cheap primary products, and imports expensive manufactured products, leads to something called a trade deficit. The value of the LIC's imports is bigger than the value of their exports, and as a result, LICs lose money from trade, and therefore they have less money to spend on development. For example, on healthcare, on education, on infrastructure, which is an important part of why LICs struggle to become HICs. So the first economic cause of the development gap is the fact that LICs export primary products and they import manufactured products. Make sure you've got these notes down. Second economic cause. HICs actually are partly responsible for keeping LICs poor through something called a trade barrier. Write this subtitle, please. The example of a trade barrier that I'm going to show you today is called a tariff. Here's how it works. Imagine this is an LIC, like Kenya in East Africa, and it wants to sell some goods to an HIC, like the UK. The UK puts something called a tariff in the way. A tariff is an example of a trade barrier, which makes it more difficult for the LIC to sell the product to the HIC. Here's how it works. Imagine you're Kenya, and you're a farmer in Kenya, and you're trying to export milk to the UK. When the milk reaches the UK, it is hit by something called a tariff. A tariff is a tax on the product, on the import to the UK or to a country. This tax makes the product more expensive, so that when the product sits in a UK supermarket, it is now more expensive than the same product made in the UK. And because it's more expensive, fewer people buy it, which means the income from the Kenyan farmers is lower. And as a result, they pay fewer taxes and they have less money to spend on improving their lives. So a tariff is a tax on imports. Now, why would a country want to put tariffs in place? Well, let me show you the UK farmer. This is a typical 2-litre bottle of milk made in the UK. The UK government wants to protect UK farmers. It wants to make sure that UK farmers still make a good income, because the UK farmers, like the other people in the UK, vote for the UK government and keep them in power. As a result, the government wants to make sure they are happy and they have their jobs. Here's how this works. The tariff makes the product from another country more expensive than the product made in England, which means that this product made in England is sold more, and so the UK farmers continue to make a good income. This keeps the people in the UK happy, and it gives people a good income, but it prevents the people in LICs who are trying to import to the UK from making as much money. It's called a tariff. So to review, a trade barrier is something that a country puts in place to reduce the imports of products from another country. This helps protect the workers in that country, for example the UK, by reducing the amount of competition for products from other countries, which means that when people choose to buy a product in, for example, a supermarket, they will end up usually choosing the product made in their country because it's cheaper. That is what a trade barrier like a tariff does. A tariff, if you remember, is a tax on imports. It makes the price of the imported product more expensive. There are many examples of these around the world, not just on milk, but on all kinds of products. But all of them have the same goal, which is to protect the jobs and the incomes of people in that country. As a result, the LICs lose income and they remain poor. Let's check your learning. If you don't have a whiteboard, then write these questions in your books and see if you can answer them, and I'll go through the answers. So first question for you. Just write the answer. What is a trade barrier? Pause the video. You should have put a trade barrier is something that a country puts in place to reduce the amount of imports from another country in order to protect jobs in that country. Question 2. Give me an example of a trade barrier and explain how it works. An example of a trade barrier is a tariff, and it works as a tax on the import, making it more expensive, thereby reducing demand for that product and reducing the income for the country or company trying to sell that product. Question 3. Give me 2 economic causes of the development gap. You should have put the first economic cause is the fact that LICs export primary products and import manufactured products. That is an economic cause because it's to do with money. Second economic cause, trade barriers. HICs reduce imports from LICs, thereby keeping the LICs poorer. Next question. If an LIC makes less money from its exports or makes less money because of trade barriers, why is that a problem for its development? Making less money from exports or from trade is a problem because that money that would go to the government or to the companies would or could be spent on development projects that would help improve people's quality of life. For example, on a new hospital, or training doctors, or new roads to improve trade, or better schools with better trained teachers and better paid teachers, which would mean better education and better access to jobs. So the economic causes of development are very important in understanding why the development gap exists. Time to embed this into your memory. Answer these questions from memory and then mark your answers using the green suggested answers I give you. Here are the questions. State 2 physical causes of the development gap. That takes you back a lesson. And using figure 1, so these two pictures together, explain one economic cause of the development gap. Make sure you use all of these words. Pause the video and attempt the answers. Okay, question 1. 2 physical causes of the development gap. You should have put climate, so hot and dry climate versus a mild climate. That affects how easy it is to farm, also the spread of diseases. And natural disasters. Many versus no earthquakes, for example, or hurricanes, or landslides, or tornadoes, or volcanic eruptions. These are the 2 physical causes of the development gap. Second question. Make sure you use these keywords again. You should have said that one economic cause is that LICs like Ethiopia have trade deficits. LICs mostly export cheap primary products like agricultural products and commodities. Commodities are natural products, natural resources that have a value to people, like gold or oil. However, they import more expensive manufactured products from HICs like cars and airplanes. This means the value of imports is greater than exports, so they lose money. As a result, they fall into debt and cannot invest in education, healthcare, or infrastructure which are needed for development. Mark your answer to this by checking whether you've got each of these 4 sentences. If you don't have one of them, add it in green, or if you're missing parts of them, add them in green. Also, make sure you underline each of the keywords. Give yourselves a mark out of 6 overall. Finally, review your learning this lesson. From memory, write 2 questions based on things you learned this lesson. Write the answers, and then test yourselves on them in a week. Thank you very much for joining me for this lesson. Next lesson, we'll be looking at the history of the development gap and why things that happened in the past have caused the problems of development today. Thank you for joining me again. I'll see you then.